And hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Magical Journey. I'm your host, Daniel Cahoon. And before we get started, I just want to throw out a little bit of shameless promotion here. First of all, I would like for you, if you have not yet, go to magicaljourney.com, which is my website, and it has literally all of the dirt on the Magical Journey brand, the podcast, all of my social media, Facebook, X, all of them. Everything is on there. And there's a couple of extra tidbits on there that I really want to bring your attention to. First of all, there's some extra video on there of guest appearances I've made on other people's shows. And there's a big thing, the Magical Merch Shop is now up. So please, 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 if you get an opportunity, and even if you don't get an opportunity, go to my store. Just go to the store. You won't be disappointed, I promise you. There's 2 different designs to choose from on there. I'm not going to give it away. Go check it out. And you too can be sporting the latest fashion from Magical Journey. Today, I have a guest that I'm excited about because we're talking about another book, and you know how I am about printed material and reading material. Love it. My guest reached out to me. I reached out to them through email, through social media, through the Ethernet somehow. And we came together and decided that we were going to do this today. So without further ado, I am bringing to the stage Kevin Killen. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, dude?
I'm doing just fine, enjoying this little bit of a Christmas break.
Yes, definitely. Hey, so do me a favor and tell us a little bit about you and anything that you would like to promote, including this book that we're talking about.
Okay, sure. Actually, if you like, so I'm promoting Ghosts in Me. I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a copy of my book. Basically, this book chronicles pretty much most of my life involved with the paranormal, starting about when I was about 5 years old up into current time. And I'm actually working on part 2 that goes from about 2018 until currently, because I've had more experiences dealing with other things that is still paranormal, but not the ghostly realm. I have a lot of things like I'm empathic, so I've got a lot of things going on with numbers, things like that. So I've had a lot of experience. I just had about 2 weeks ago, I had my first sleep paralysis, which was scary and interesting. I know they call that the old hag effect. So actually, that was the first time I had that, and it scared the hell out of me, and I'm still really freaked out about that. But we can get into that later. But so I'm working on part 2 of this book, but Ghost in Me takes the reader through the time I'm 5 years old up until about 5 years ago, and basically just covers everything that I've experienced, and I've experienced a lot in that time. So basically, I just love to talk about it, and just anything and all paranormal things. I just love to talk because it's just one of these subjects that you just can't get enough of.
100%. So first of all, the cover of that book is amazing and very, very cool. And I know you shouldn't judge a book by a cover, but I was very impressed with the artwork.
Thank you.
So your story started at age 5. That is incredibly young.
Yes.
Can you give us a little detail about that?
Absolutely. First of all, before I do that, where exactly are you located?
I am located in the Metro Nashville area.
Okay, you're in Nashville. Okay, for some reason I thought you were Midwest. And the reason I'm saying that is because my first experience took place when I lived in Evanston, Illinois.
Oh, yeah. So to put it in perspective, I was actually born in Harvey, Illinois.
Okay. All right. Well, I knew there was an Illinois connection there somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, my first experience, I stayed in a house with my family. It was one of those really creepy old big ones. It's actually still there. I've actually looked it up on Zillow. It actually still exists, but they renovated it. It looks nothing like it did when I was when I had my experience. But my father was a journalist. He worked for United Press International. And I had a couple of brothers that were older than me, and he took them to a tournament of some sort in St. Louis this particular weekend. It was just me and my mother, and we were downstairs eating, and we heard footsteps upstairs. And we had the old wooden floors, so you could hear everything, every footfall you could hear. And I turned to her and I said, "Who's that upstairs? Everyone's gone." And my mother, I think, was as scared as I was, and she said, "Oh, that's my little boy." And I didn't know what that meant then, because I was only 5 years old. But I was just like, "Hey, I'm the only little boy in this house, but what's going on?" But it was distinctive footsteps walking across a hallway. And that was my first experience in the paranormal. And of course, I didn't realize that until much later. But yeah, that was the first one that I ever had.
Wow. So it's interesting that she said little boy. So I'm about to ask you a question that verging on rather personal, but did she lose a child?
She did.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
Okay. That's what, because whenever you said that, the first thing I thought of is, wow, that was a lost child.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't think of that till much later.
Yeah. Did she carry the child to term?
No.
Okay, so it was all right. Wow. Holy crap. So that was your first experience at 5. What was the next thing that led into you starting to have this journey? I mean, there was probably a couple of steps at least before you finally went on a full-fledged journey of just experiences and trying to comprehend things.
Right. So this happened in the 70s. For all our younger viewers, there was a lot of really good horror movies back then, and back then it was a little more lenient, where parents usually let people, kids watch things. But I remember watching The Exorcist at a really young age, and I shouldn't have, because that movie still gives me the creeps. But about 9 years old, I think, was the first time I actually saw that movie, and not for children. But I actually read the book later on when I was in, I think, middle school, and that was just as bad. I mean, I shouldn't have been reading that then either. But anyway, so we did that. So I'd always been fascinated with the paranormal and ghosts and horror and this and that. And really, I had moved, by this time we had moved to Virginia. I'd started living in Falls Church, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I had read a book by Augustus Rodive, I always get this guy's name wrong. But anyway, he recorded sounds in the forests of Sweden or Germany. And he was actually recording bird sounds, and he was getting voices. Oh. And he was kind of the first EVP guy. So I read his book and I was fascinated. I was like, wow, you can really do this. So there was an old church not too far from where I lived, and I had one of those really big Panasonic tape recorders, and I decided, hey, there's some gravestones over there. Why don't I go ahead and try and capture some EVPs of my own? Oh, wow. So I took my then girlfriend reluctantly to this place and put it on a gravestone and hit play, and then kind of ran away and then came back. I didn't get anything then. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it was too close to the road. If anybody knows anything about Northern Virginia, it's very busy. So there's a lot of cars and traffic and this and that. But later on, about a couple years later, I was actually alone in my house. And I had one of those big boombox dual cassettes. Mm-hmm. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to see if there's anything in this. Because I had some experience. I was having footsteps in my bedroom. Doors were opening and closing by themselves. I was having some experiences in my room there. So I went ahead and I said, okay, if there's anybody in here, please let me know, or please show me. So I hit record, and I went to a friend's house, came back about an hour and a half later, rewound it, played it all the way through. It right at the probably the last 2 minutes of the tape, I got what sounded like somebody was pounding on the radio. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's this? Then at the very, very last 10 seconds of the tape, this voice came through and said, I have shown you, ha ha. Wow. And it kind of, and it was as if you took the tape and slowed it down, so it was almost like a growling noise. And that got, I literally jumped out of the seat and then went to ran over to my friend's house because I was scared to death. I didn't know what the heck was that in there,
Yeah.
but that was like that really kind of kicked it off. Let's see
Now,
what we can find. So that was, and I was about I was about 19 years old at that time.
wow. So, did you have experiences like shortly after that? Did you have any experiences, especially involving electronics?
Actually, I didn't. That was one of the first ones that I had actually in my till recently. And I have a digital tape recorder now, but
Oops. Where did we go? Whoops. Hello. The universe just cut him off. Hopefully, he will be back in a moment. This is getting exciting. This is getting very exciting. Let me put this on pause for just a moment, though, because I want. Okay, and we are back. And so, pick up where you left off at.
So that was one of the probably the best one I've ever had EVP wise. And again, I have a digital recorder now, but for some reason the EVPs are slow with me. I don't understand why, but that was like the best one that I've ever got. And I've gotten some that are just you can't really decipher them. They're just too much. I can't definitively say that they are. But that was really the best one I've ever had, and it was my first one, and that really again was the catalyst for me delving into the paranormal and saying, hey, there's something out here. And remember back then, you didn't come out and say, hey, I got a ghost in my house, because people would just
Right.
back away slowly or whatever, and oh, that guy's a little nuts. It's gotten a lot better since then, but there's still a stigma attached to this, but it's gotten better. But yeah, that was like my first time, and ever since then I've really just jumped in and just have had tons of experiences and tried to study it and see what's really out there.
Wow, yeah. I know some of the devices that I like to use are some of the obvious ones like cat balls. They really like to mess with the cat balls. I use a REM pod with whenever I'm working with them, and and there's a motion sensor like that they kind of like to play with sometimes that I use, and then the typical was an EMF meter and K2. Those they love the K2 too. It depends on where I'm at. A lot of times, what I get with the K2, but yeah, the electronics seems to be like, I remember having one of those old one of the old TVs back during the 80s, black and white, the ones that you were the remote for the TV.
Oh yeah.
They would sit there and move the dials around to flip the stations and stuff. That was kind of freaky. That was freaky. So when you start talking about some of the experiences that you had with being an empath and so forth, how does that work in regard to dealing with some of your friends that hang out with you?
That's a really good question. For me, I kind of say, and I put this in my book. If you remember, like the motels where they have the vacancy signs out front and then the flashing neon signs, that's kind of what I think. I've been called a ghost magnet, and that I don't know, but I guess if you look at it and hear my story, you probably would say it's true. But I think of that as a beacon. I'm a beacon so that they pick up on me. They're like, they're just wandering around doing their thing, and I come along and they're like, oh, this guy can see and hear us. Let's go. And that's usually what tends to happen. Like, I'll go to a place and I'll get bombarded immediately by whatever's in there. The temperatures will change. I'll get the headaches. I'll get the feeling that there's something watching me. I'll hear things. I'll see things. So I think that's part of being empathic. Where I just have I'm highly sensitive to that, intuitive. So I'm more in tune with those things. And I think they pick up on that vibration.
Yeah. I don't know what that room is off to the left of you there, but there's definitely some shadow movement
Yes.
in there.
Yes.
And I like they're all but just peeking around the corner,
Yep.
basically.
They do this all the time.
Very interesting.
Yep.
I tend to pick up on things a lot with people, which can be a good thing and a bad thing depending on what's going on.
Yes.
So when you in the time period that you really started experiencing some of the stuff that led you to kind of a self-discovery of sorts with, and I love that you call yourself a ghost magnet. That's interesting. What were some of the experiences that you had that kind of stood out and made you go, this is not normal?
Okay. Excuse me. When I was in college, I went to college in Pennsylvania, and I lived in an older house with a roommate. And when we were alone, we would hear like cabinets rattling, doors opening, things like that, and we were like, "What the heck is this?" But it only happened when each of us were in the house alone, never together. So then one time, and I put this in the book there because I thought it was a really funny story. I think it was a Sunday, and me and my roommate are sitting around watching TV, and he just out of the blue turns to me and says, "Do you ever hear anything in this house?" And it was like this big weight lifted off my shoulders because I was like, damn, I was thinking, geez, I was going to ask him that. And so we started comparing notes, and we were hearing and seeing the same stuff. Wow. And that was really freaky because it was so blatant. It was just, you'd be sleeping in your room and you hear the doors open in the bathroom, which is, down the hall. And my roommate at the time was a bartender. So he never came home till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So I knew there was nobody in the house. But you would think, oh my God, who got in the house? And I'd get up and grab the baseball bat and walk around. This is a very little house. It was a ranch. So there wasn't like a lot of ground to cover. But yeah, it was almost every day. So I had a friend at the time who was an empath witch. Oh, wow. And she's a psychic. And I told her, I said, what's going on? And she was like, yeah, you have activity in your house. I was like, yeah, I do. Could you come over and see what's going on here? Because it's really freaking us out. So I brought her over and she was able to contact, it was one of the former owners who just didn't want to leave and wanted to make sure we were taking care of his house. And she said, he's not going to hurt you. He just wants to make sure everything's good in the house. And he does like you guys because he knows you respect his stuff, but he just wants to hang around and he's here. And I was like, okay, well, he's freaking us out. How do we get rid of him? And she just said, just tell him that. Thank you. We're taking care of your house. Would you please leave? And I said, are you serious? And she was like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And again, at this time, I was still on the fence with a lot of this stuff, and I was still a pretty big skeptic. And I was just like, yeah, maybe not. But so I felt kind of silly doing this, but I was like, okay, I'll try it, and it worked, and that never happened again. Wow. He was just So that was like. That was really, again, that was really creepy because, like I said, we both had the same experiences at different times when we were alone in the house. So that was pretty creepy.
Wow. Have you ever had any experiences with cryptids?
No. Actually, no, I have not. But I do know there's a park in Pennsylvania. It's really beautiful. And I remember driving in there one time with a girlfriend and saying, this would be a good Bigfoot hangout. I don't know why I said that. It just kind of popped out of my head, but I don't know. But no, I never have that I know of. I do know that they exist. And I would love to do that. But yeah, I've not had a cryptid encounter, but like I said, I would love to go on a Bigfoot excursion.
Right. Yeah. Those, like where I live right about 2 hours from the Land Between the Lakes and about 2 or 3 hours from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So I'm literally, like I'm an hour away from the Cumberland Ridge. So nice. There's a lot of activity, like literally all around me. And the cryptids tend to be very vocal in some ways. So it gets interesting sometimes. You really haven't had anything go on with like cryptid identification or anything like that.
No.
What about entities that are not necessarily disembodied human?
Yes, I have had one shadow figure experience, and somebody, one of my friends said something about abduction,
Oh, wow.
about alien abduct, and I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't think I've ever been abducted. And they're like, well, how do you know? And I was like, well, that's a good point. I don't know, but I don't know why she brought that up, but it was interesting because anything's possible, and I try to keep an open mind about all of this stuff. So, but yeah, I did have a shadow person experience, and it was I was living in an apartment in Pennsylvania, and I was in a bedroom with my then girlfriend, and this shadow just went from the floor to the ceiling. I mean, I literally watched it grow, and it was big, and it had shoulders and a head, and it didn't do anything, but it was like 9 feet tall. So I told her, I said, did you see that? And then she says to me, oh, you finally saw him, did you? And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, I've been seeing this for a while now. And I was like, well, thanks for letting me know. So I went to the window, and we were on the second floor, so we were off the ground a good 30 feet or whatever. So that couldn't have been anything from across the way or somebody breaking in or whatever. But this thing literally went from the ground to the ceiling and then just disappeared. But it had shape and it had form, and it was just big. And like I said, after that, I told her, I said, well, you want to elaborate on what you see around here when I'm not here or whatever. And she had a lot of good stories to tell. And she actually, she had a lot of dark entities visiting her. She was a very dark person. So unfortunately, she had a lot of dark things. And I cover that in the book. And she's actually religious now. I still talk to her, but she actually, because of this, she had to turn to religion. It was getting so bad for her.
Wow. You mentioned your dad was a journalist. Was your family fairly religious?
No, not my immediate family. My grandmother, speaking of Tennessee, they grew up in Elizabethan, which is right on the border of Virginia. Yeah. And I've been down. It's a beautiful area. I haven't been down there in a long time, but they were Southern Baptist, so they were they were big Bible thumpers, and I'll say that. And but I loved them. They were great. I was related to mountain people, and they were really cool people. And again, I consider myself a Southerner. But my immediate family was not religious, really. But I do believe that I get my abilities from my mother and my father, because they both have Gaelic background, so they're both from Ireland. So I think that's where I get a lot of this from, is from them being Irish.
That's very possible. Yeah, there's a lot of the Celtic traditions. There's a lot of paranormal activity involved and a lot of giftings involved there. Yep. So you mentioned that your first real experience happened in Evanston, Illinois. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, which is really interesting because I actually worked at the Target there in Evanston for about 2 years before I left Illinois. It's a very interesting area. It's very close to the lake there.
Yes.
Very, very interesting area. And I found it to always be very eclectic.
Yes.
Very eclectic community there. That's where I had my first experience with eating food that was Greek food, in particular, stuffed olive leaves that were not cooked by a Greek person. They were cooked by Syrians. And I got to tell you, it was amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think they have a big Greek festival down there in Chicago every year.
They do.
Yeah,
They do. They have a big eating festival in Chicago every year.
that is
And
true.
it's very interesting because the area you're talking about, and one of the reasons why I bring it up again, uh, there's a lot of Middle Eastern and Jewish communities there.
Yes. Yep.
Very old um, area in a sense, and the energy there feels very almost mysterious in a sense.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Very much so, especially in some of those areas over by the lake, right over there, and from where the lake meets there on the shoreline in Evanston, you can look across to
Yep.
actually see Navy Pier just
Yes.
down from you. A very
Yes.
beautiful area. Uh, Now, how far was that from the Lakeshore Drive area?
Oh, gosh, what? Not very far. I'm trying to think because Evanston's like right near Chicago, so it's not
Yes.
a couple miles at the most. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, as a kid, everything's far, everything's big, but I think I've looked. I think it was a couple miles only, because like we used to go downtown all the time because like Evanston's there, and then Chicago, the Loop, and all that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was very very close to Chicago.
Wow. Yeah. The Lakeshore Drive was a very interesting area. That was actually one of the big buildings there on Lakeshore Drive, right across from the lake itself. Was the building that Anton LaVey was actually born in.
Oh wow,
Um,
that's right.
yeah. Yeah. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of connection to darkness in Chicago.
Yes. Yeah. So they actually
Um,
had gosh, I can't remember. They've had some tragedies down there. That
very big
like right
ones.
there, I forgot they had like a boat, I think, capsized
Um,
and drowned a bunch of people, and right near Harpo,
yeah,
which used to be Oprah Winfrey Studios, and those were apparently haunted for a while.
yeah. Well, the studio was actually used as a gathering point for some of the people who perished in that.
Right. Right.
Um, I can't remember. I just talked about this a couple of episodes back, and I cannot remember the name of the ship now that capsized. But yeah, it capsized right on the Chicago River there,
Yeah.
and it was horrendous. It was like a
Yep.
horrifying
Yeah. It
event.
was. Yeah, they've had some tragedy, but it was interesting because I found out later on, and as a kid, I used to love going to the Brookfield and Lincoln Park Zoo. And then I found out later on that I guess the Lincoln Park Zoo has like a number of bodies buried underneath. So that was kind of
Yeah,
interesting. But
uh,
yeah, Chicago
uh,
definitely has a very weird energy to it.
the SS England or Eastland was the name of the ship that was. It was a passenger ship. I knew, yeah. Chicago did have, and because there was the area, there was the one theater that was at Dillinger that was
Yes.
killed in the back
The
alley there.
biograph?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
biograph. Yep.
And then there was the site of the Valentine Day Massacre,
Yep.
very dark area.
Absolutely.
Uh, there was a lot of areas that were unfortunately tainted by mob activity.
Yes.
Then you had the famous Bachelor Grove Cemetery,
Yep.
which was
Yep.
over by actually not too far from Harvey in was it Mid Midlothian? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Midlothian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right over in there
Yeah. And then of course you got Resurrection Mary on Archer Avenue.
on Archer Avenue at Resurrection Cemetery.
Yep.
Yeah, those were all like Bachelor's Grove probably is one of the most notorious and is worldwide known. It's also now my understanding is that area is extremely dangerous to go to.
Yes, that's what I've
Um,
heard.
so with with all of the activity uh, within the Chicago area, what was life like for you living in that area, being gifted to be able to experience some of these things. Did you have a lot of experiences living in that area?
I didn't have a lot, but I did have some. I do remember one time, and this may be, I don't really know how to qualify this one. So in the house that I had the footsteps in that we lived in, it had an upper landing and then it had an attic. So you had like you went up the stairs and then to the left and the right you had the rooms and the bathroom. And I think this house was like 1900, so it was very old. Um, but I had a dream one time that all these stuffed animals came walking down by themselves, just right down the
Jeez.
yeah, and again, that was when I lived in the house. I didn't even have that many stuffed animals. I just thought that was kind of weird. I was just like, oh wow, as a kid, I was like, oh, what was this about? I never told anybody about it. I mentioned it in my book, but because I didn't really understand what it was. But yeah, all these, and I had an attic, a really scary, creepy attic, and they all came down from the attic, and they all just walked down the stairs by themselves, all of them. And that's such a vivid dream. And I was like, again, 5 years old, and I still remember that being that vivid in there. But the one thing that it did kind of, and I've debated this in my mind for years, when I was growing up there, it's no longer there. Right down the street from my house was a place called Alexander Park. And it was just, an open field, and it had baseball diamonds, and it had, swing sets, things like this, just a regular outdoor park. And I remember there was this really, really pretty lady. She had dark hair, and she wore a nice tank top, and she had a golden retriever, and she was just hanging out one day, and she gave me a piece of gum, and that was it. And I never saw her again. And I'm pretty sure she was flesh and blood, but there's something within me that says she wasn't. Wow. And this is just something that it pops in my head a lot. Was she real? Because now I think about it, I'm wondering if she really was. But she was very attractive, and the dog was. I never saw her again. It was just a one time. But something within me, as I got older, always debates: was this a real person or was this a ghost?
No doubt. Yeah, yeah. You had mentioned, and it's interesting that you brought up alien abduction earlier, because you had mentioned having a sleep paralysis experience recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This was about 2 weeks ago, so it was very recent. I've never had one of these before, but I was just laying in my bed and I couldn't move. I was conscious that I couldn't move. My legs and arms wouldn't move. I was having trouble breathing. And the thing is that when I got up later on that day, when I finally woke up and was able to move and everything, I did some research on that, and they talked about different things about, you could hear this, you could see this. I saw nothing but white. There was nothing but whiteness. And the crazy thing is that when I woke up in this dream state, I was in the same position as I was when I was having the paralysis. And that kind of threw me for a loop, because I don't know what that means either. But I've never had that before, and I've read up a lot on sleep paralysis, and that's exactly what I could not move. And I knew I could not move, and I was choking. It was just the weirdest thing, but I woke right up, and I was still in that position. I don't know what it was, but it really kind of freaked me out.
You didn't have any odd markings on you?
No, nothing. It was just this white. It was just like I was in a white room. There was no sound other than me not being able to breathe. It was just all white, and my house is not all white, but yeah, I don't know what that was. It was just the weirdest thing, but yeah, nothing like that. So I don't know.
No strange smells or anything.
No. Just very fear. That was just really creepy.
No doubt. Yeah. Did you have like any sensation of anything, any messages that came through?
No, that was, like I said, the only sound was me choking and me knowing that I couldn't move my arms and legs. Like I could see my arms and legs, but I wasn't moving. And I was like, I was gasping for air. So yeah, that was it. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. I've never had that before or since, and I don't think I ever want it again.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun. Gosh. That is really, really unusual because, like, seeing the all white space and so forth, not so much so. But the rest of it definitely, definitely unusual. Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't even know. I haven't run across anything like that in my research where people had sleep paralysis and there wasn't some kind of um, manifestation of physical sensations or
Right.
um, messages that came through or something. Uh, it's very unusual to have sleep paralysis, and it's just sleep paralysis, huh? And you don't recall any alien activity
No,
before or after any of
not
that?
at all. Nope. Not at all. Now, the one thing I will say this, and I'm putting this in my next book, and I can plug that later. A couple months ago, I woke up and my room is small. I have a very small. It's like a studio apartment basically, but I have wooden floors, and there must be something here with wood, me and wood. But anyway, I woke up. It was probably about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, typical, that time. And I was going to go to the bathroom. I sat up and I heard something run across my floor, like literally run across my floor. It had
Mhm.
2 legs and it ran into the kitchen. Now, my kitchen, which is the room to the left of me that you're seeing the shadow stuff, there's nothing but a wall that connects me to the neighbor's house. So, whatever this thing was, I never saw it, but I heard it. It ran across my floor on 2 legs and disappeared in the kitchen.
Wow.
And this happened like about 3, 4 months ago. And again, this is what I say. It's almost like a transcendence kind of with me. And I've actually talked to other people that are sensitive, and they talk about that because this is what I'm putting in my next book is like things like this that I've never happened to me before. Like I said, I've woken up plenty of times, but this particular night, yeah, I don't know what that was, but it ran across my floor on 2 legs. It didn't sound big. It was, and you know what I was kind of thinking? It was a gray. Does that
Oh
sound
wow.
weird? That's where the alien part came in. I was thinking, do you think I could have been a gray? Because grays aren't too big, right?
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not very big at
But
all.
I don't know what I never saw anything, but I sure heard it. I mean, so I don't. But that's what kind of the first thing that popped in my head was a gray. I don't
Wow.
know.
That's kind of they tend to be a little bit. I mean, they're very lightweight. They're very quick, um, and they can be a little bit on the mischievous side sometimes
Hmm.
too. Um, wow. So after you begin really kind of, I guess, growing into your own, and what types of giftings did you discover that you had? You mentioned being an empath.
Hmm. Yeah, empathic is definitely one. I do believe I have some psychic ability. Um, I think honestly, after studying this for so long, I think everyone has a little bit in them. It's just you have to develop it. Um,
Mhm.
but I've found I do a lot of things like, I'll think of somebody I haven't thought of in a while and they'll call me, or I'll think of a song that I haven't heard from a long time and they'll play either not that song, but a song by that group. That happens a lot. I tend to look at clocks a lot and see 3 numbers like 222, 1111, 111, that kind of thing. I see that a lot. I'm not exactly sure so I had a friend of mine tell me one time because this happened in Pennsylvania, and this is actually kind of a funny anecdote. We were driving in his car, and I looked down at the clock, and it was 3:33. And I said, "Hey, that'd make a good lottery number. We should play it." Just throwing that out there. He's like, "Yeah, maybe." Didn't play it, and guess what hit the next day?
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was yeah, 333 hit, and he was like, "Kevin, I can't believe you said that, and we didn't play it." And I was like, and I was doing that all the time. And I finally learned you have to listen to that intuition when you say that. Go do
Mhm.
that because this has gotten me in a lot of trouble. It's taken me, 40 something years to figure out your gut is right. Listen to your gut. When your gut tells you something, go with it. But I do that a lot. And I asked him, I said, because he has some ability because he was a shaman. And I asked him, I said, am I sending stuff out and getting it back, or what's going on here? He said, you're doing a little bit of both. So you're coming into tune and with a lot of your ability and stuff. It's just, this is what's going to happen from now on. It'll increase and it'll decrease and it'll go away, but it'll come back tenfold or whatever. And just be prepared. You can't close it now. It's opened up. And he's right. And that was about 15 years ago. And it's just gotten, increasingly like that. And like I said, I'm to the point now where it used to freak me out and I just laugh about it because it's like an everyday occurrence now. So.
Right. It's kind of like breathing, walking. It just happens. Yeah. I always find like whenever I get an intuitive thought, it got to do the thing, whatever the thing is, got to go do the thing. Because if you don't, it's going to, like you said, it'll come back on you every time you're like, I should have done the thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I find the experience a lot of times to be very unusual with people who just refused. I don't understand those that refuse to listen to their intuition.
Yes.
They just block it out. They're like, whatever, and walk off.
Yep.
And I'm just like, are you serious?
Yep.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
So do you have children by any chance?
No, I don't.
Okay. Because it's I always find it interesting to see if things have passed on to the next generation or not, because I know a lot of times that does tend to happen. Parents will have abilities and gifts, and they'll pass them down to their children and so forth and so on.
Right.
Do you mind me asking what you said? Your dad was a journalist. Do you what company did he work with?
United Press International, UPI.
Yes. Wow, one of the big ones of the time.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting, because that, like, they were kind of the go-to for all of the current news, the breaking news back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Now what is it, the AP?
American
Press or something like that.
Associated Press. Yeah.
Associated Press. That's the one that kind of took over.
Yep.
What do you make of the current situation that we're in the paranormal community, especially with all the craziness going on with the, just for lack of a better term, I don't even really know what to call it, to be honest with you, now that I'm trying to think about it. The stuff with the drones and so forth like that. What do you make of all that right now?
Yeah, there's, I think there's a cover up going on somewhere. I honestly think that is more serious than they're letting on. Because it's interesting because now they started to open up the UFO files a little bit, and now they're starting to admit there was something out there. And I've heard people talk about this for a long time, and now that they're opening up some of these FOIA requests, are actually, the government's actually coming clean on some of this stuff and saying, yeah, this did happen or that did happen. I don't honestly know what that is, but it would worry me. I mean, honestly, it does worry me because I'm actually not that far from New Jersey. I'm actually in Lower Shore of Maryland, so I'm actually not that far from Jersey. And we actually had them on the Delmarva Peninsula where I live. We actually had a bunch of those that when that stuff was going on in New Jersey, we had a bunch of sightings locally. I don't know what to make of it, but I'd be concerned. I am concerned. Do you remember Art Bell?
Yeah.
Art Bell. I used to love listening to Art Bell, and he came up with the term called the quickening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's been going on, where basically everything, you're going to notice everything's speeding up and everything. And he's right. I think he was onto something about the quickening, and that explained a lot of all the natural disasters and things like this going on. I think he was really onto something before he died. So I kind of think that I keep that in the back of my mind when things go like this, because I think he really knew something.
Yeah, yeah. Art Bell, Bill Cooper, William Cooper,
Yes.
was definitely another one that had a lot of theories about current events and the time frame that we're in and so forth. Followed, actually, I met William Cooper when he was doing his tour for Behold a Pale Horse, and was working with one of his associates at one time, a past life regressionist named Robin Quell, who yeah, we did some stuff together at one point, just kind of research and experimental stuff, and it's very interesting to me the way that things transpired with his story. That was very interesting.
Yep.
So I find it really I want to talk about this sequel, the second book, because I gotta tell you, like, this is the first time I've done an interview with an author, and I have not read the book yet, which now I really want to dive into it. So, and now you've got a second book you're working on.
Yes.
So the more the merrier. So tell us a little bit about the second book, and also where we can find your books at.
Okay. My second book's basically taking the first book covers from age 5 until excuse me 2017, 2018, that time period. So the next book that I'm working on now, and I'm putting the finishing touches on it, is taking it from the time my book got published until now, and it covers a variety of things. It covers like the publishing industry, like what my expectations were versus what the reality was. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't know about. I actually have a publisher. So I did the whole contract thing and everything. So, I thought I'd be Stephen King, and I'm not, which is fine, but it delves into a lot of the reality. It also, talks about what it took. I mean, I literally bled, sweat, and cried to get this book out. I mean, over a 15-year period trying to get it published. I mean, I really believed in this, and I'd add to it when I'd have more experiences. So that did that. So there's a lot of that in there. I had a near-death experience that's covered.
Oh, wow.
I had a major heart attack, and right before the book came out, as a matter of fact, the week before the book came out, and I had the Widowmaker. And my doctor said, Kevin, I don't know why you're still here, but you are, and you better change your ways or you won't be. And I was like a 2.5 pack a day smoker, and I didn't eat very well. I worked a night shift. Drank a lot of sugar and caffeine, but he said, Kevin, we've had people in here that are in much better shape than you. They didn't make it. But I had that's covered in there because I was basically to the point where when I was getting worked on in the hospital, I was at the point where I was just like, I'm okay. I felt like this peace and calm come over me, and I was like, if it's my time, I'm okay. I'm good with everything. And I had a friend of mine say that was an NDE. And I said, I just remember it was the best feeling. I've never had a feeling like that ever. It was so peaceful and calm. It was just like nothing else existed. And it was just, it's almost, and I talk about that in the book. It's really hard to put into words because it was like this, again, it's like I've never felt it before. But again, I'm glad that I wasn't my time. So that's covered in there. And just basically my basically the experiences that some of the experience we just talked about has been covered in there, and some other ones. And basically there's a point in time where I wrestle with a lot of this, where this goes away for a while, and I really wonder, did this even happen? Am I just full of it? Am I crazy? And I cover all of that, and just and there's a little bit about the paranormal community and the para unity, which I have a problem with that, but that's kind of in there. And I talk a little bit about the shows, like, some of the TV shows versus people who aren't in TV shows, and a little bit. I'm not really bashing them. I'm just kind of giving my opinion on some of them. I don't really say anything too controversial. I don't name anybody really, but I think if your paranormal TV, you'll know who I'm talking about. So
Right.
that's
Right.
in there. So and I've just covered, like I said, just things that have happened from then to now. So and like I said, with like the sleep paralysis, now I got to put that in there because that just happened
Right.
to me. So it's going to be amalgamation of just things that have happened the last 5 years to me. So that's pretty much where that's going to be.
Wow. That sounds like a good expansion to the first book. So what is the light source behind you?
I just have a overhead.
That's so weird because like there's almost like especially in the upper corner of the room behind you,
Mm-hmm.
like right behind your head, there's
Right.
almost like this misty light source
Yes.
going on
Yes,
there.
I can see. Yeah, I have it's in the middle of the room and it's uncovered light bulbs. I don't have a cover. It's just 2 light bulbs.
It's just very interesting. I just keep seeing that light source in the corner, like
Well, I'm
almost
glad you.
above your head.
Well, I'm glad you picked up on the shadow figures. I see this all the time. Like the corner of my eye, I'm always seeing things moving around in here.
Yeah, yeah. And I do hear, but honestly, this house is fairly calm compared to the house I lived at before. Where I lived before was less than a mile away from Andrew Jackson's old home, the Hermitage.
Hermitage, yes. Oh wow.
And I got to tell you, you want to talk about a mind bender?
Mm.
Oh my goodness! Like there's literally, I have photos, photos up on the Magical Journey group on Facebook of things that was caught during lives that I did on some of the other platforms. A couple of things that I caught on security cameras in my backyard. Just like honestly, there were times when I would do lives where I would set up all my devices and they would just be going off left and right, and people were like, "Wow, what in the world?" I'm like, "Welcome to living near the Hermitage." Like I was less than a mile away from it.
Oh wow.
There was a couple of low, like pretty much folks that made themselves home there. The room that I worked in most of the time that I did my video and investigation in and so forth was actually my office and the room where I set up my altar at too. So because I'm a Christo pagan and I practice screen witchcraft, so I had an altar set up, a huge altar set up in that room, and I had a 19-year-old who took residence up in that room, who was always right there in that room, and he was very fascinated by the altar and the work and so forth. There's a couple of videos where I had smartphone device going and one of the apps for it on, and I just got through charging and enchanting some railroad stakes, railroad ties to put into my yard, and I had the camera going and so forth, and the thing said, like, I had it directed right at my altar table, and all of a sudden this device pops up and goes ritual. And I went, wow. I was like, a friend of mine was on live with me whenever that happened, and he was like, "Did you just hear what that thing said?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So there was a lot of that craziness going on.
So have you been in the Hermitage?
I have been to the Hermitage.
What's the energy like in there?
Very, very creepy. I gotta tell you, that's one of those places where you are forbidden to do any recording in.
Oh wow.
Because Well, for one thing, the wallpaper that's in like throughout the house is copyrighted.
Oh, okay.
So you can't record because of the wallpaper.
Hmm.
There was a lot of just strange eeriness about the house, the grounds itself. There were cemeteries on the grounds, not only his and his family's, but there was an area that where they had their servants were buried at, and then there was um, the uh, soldier cemetery right there.
Oh.
That cemetery for the Confederate soldiers was literally right by the highway. Like you drove past it, you could see the graves right there
Oh,
in
wow.
a circle. Yeah, it was really weird. Uh, they had originally they had the when I first started going to them, they had the Tennessee Central Highland Games there
Mhm.
on the grounds. They finally moved those off of out of the Hermitage area. But yeah, it was just that whole area was just crazy. The energy,
Mhm.
um, the not too far away from there, Global Life Church was. That's where they had their campus. Greg Locke and his church. So there was a lot of craziness, a lot of strange energy
Wow.
um, in that area. Um,
Yeah, I always wanted to go see Loretta Lynn's home
oh,
because I've seen a couple of documentaries on her, and she believed in the paranormal, and she talked about some
mhm.
of her ghost stories. I would love to go visit that sometime.
There's a lot. Nashville has a lot of stuff. Um, the Opryland Hotel has what they call the Lady in Black that
Oh,
haunts that hotel. There's that whole area right through there is very haunted because the family that originally owned that land, uh, the lady in black, I forget her name right off the bat. Uh, the reason they believe the reason why she haunts that area is because her last wish was that an orphanage or a school um, be put on the property, and
oh,
of course there nothing close to that got put on
right.
that property. Uh, and of course there was the flood that pretty much destroyed Opryland Hotel at one point during the 90s,
Man.
and they had to go back and rebuild and reconstruct there. There's been a lot of add-on to the building and so forth. It's a super cool place. Like it has like uh, a man-made river that goes through it, and so it's just
Oh,
amazing,
wow.
amazing place. It's very, very much worth going to see and check out. But it is the energy there is just it's very creepy. Printer's Alley is another area that's very haunted,
Mhm.
um, very well known for being a paranormal hotspot. There's just a lot of places. I mean, you gotta know, like the Battle of Nashville and the Battle of Franklin were two of the biggest, bloodiest battles in the Civil War. And the Battle of
Yep.
Franklin absolutely just decimated Franklin, Tennessee.
Mhm.
Like all of those buildings through there, all those old buildings downtown, a lot of them were used as field hospitals and so forth. There's blood stains still on floors and walls there.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, a lot of paranormal activity in downtown Franklin, very much so. Uh, so it's very interesting indeed. One of the things I want to talk about for a minute that you had brought up was uh, the controversy with some of the like within the community, some of the television shows. Oh my goodness! So I do know that I have a friend who was pretty big on YouTube, or not YouTube, but TikTok at one point, who had gotten a couple of offers from some of the shows, and in the contract, like one of the reasons why he didn't sign up with them is because basically you had to sign over all of your stuff to them.
Oh,
like any of his content, any of his personal content and so forth. All of it went to their ownership.
Jeez.
And he was like, I'm not giving my content away to people. I'm not doing that. But so you tend to like I'm curious because your reaction to the term para-unity. Can you kind of camp on that for a moment?
Sure. So here's my thing with this, and this may be personal, and I think some people may say it's petty, and that's fine. I've actually had an argument. Okay, I'll say a discussion. It was more of an argument with a person on another show. The audience member was talking about this certain person who had a show, and that they knew everything. You couldn't say anything bad about them. They knew they were like the paranormal expert. And I told her, I said, lady, I said, I've lived this life and I wrote a damn book. I said, you're going to tell me he knows more about this than I do? I said, it's not even apples and oranges here. But this woman she would not listen. It was because he was on TV that he knew everything. And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me, right? And it's just, and I had to leave because I was like, look, I can't do this because I'm going to get really upset because she wasn't listening to the idea that, like, yeah, I respect what this guy does. But she was like, oh, well, he's on TV, so he knows it and you don't. And I was like, no, I wrote a book and I've lived this and I've studied a lot and this and that. But she just wouldn't have it. She just wasn't having it. So I was like, okay. But also, if you've ever noticed, and I know some people do this, is they have the Paracons all over the country. Do you ever notice who goes to those? If you ever look at them, 9 times out of 10, they're the same people. And you know what? God bless them, because I know most of them. I don't know them personally, but I've seen them on the shows. I respect what they do, but that's what they're doing. It's like they only have these certain people at these shows now, and it's just like there's so many people in this field that are not well known or not known at all, and they're just as good as anybody because they're not on TV on a Saturday. We're not going to invite you to this, whatever. So I just began to notice that, like, every time these Paracons go, all the big ones have the same names every year, and it's just like, wow. But hey, I'm all for making money. I'm a capitalist. That's fine. But it just bothers me because this is what happens: is they'll go there, and then I started hearing some things from people who went to these and how bad they were. And people were like, they came in late. They weren't prepared. There, a lot of them were there, and I was like, wow. So you're gonna, go for that, go for that. But it's just, to me, it's like I think there's people in this field that want para-unity, but it's just because everyone goes this way that there's never going to be, because too many people have too many opinions now. And I think, and again, I tell people this all the time. I said, we don't know anything. This is all speculative. This is all theory based. Nothing's been proven.
Right.
So I can't say that this is the theory of relativity, E equals MC squared. I can't say that with anything. Why am I hearing footsteps? I don't know. But, and it's just the whole thing. And again, like some people, and I think the TV shows and the radio shows and everything and the internet has brought this to the forefront. And I love the fact that it's actually expanded it, because, 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't this. There was maybe In Search Of. And that was about it.
Right.
And then they kind of
unsolved mysteries.
Yeah. But it's just to me, and then they always go to the same places, and it's like you can't even go to these places to investigate now because they're booked for 3 years.
Right.
So, and it's just, it's just to me, but that's, I think, and again, I cover that in my book, and I'm trying to, I have to edit this because that really upset me because this woman was not listening to me, and she was just staunch on this one personality who's pretty famous. He knows everything and I don't. And I was just like, okay, so I'm getting nowhere with this person. And again, again, maybe it's just a personal thing, but I've been on so many of these shows and I've talked to so many people and this and that, and everybody's got good stuff. But again, I have, I get paid X amount of dollars for this episode and you don't, so you got to listen to me. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So it's just kind of my take on it. But I think there's so many really intelligent, smart people in this field that do a lot of great work that are not properly recognized.
You're right. There's a lot, we've got a lot of young folks that are starting to get into, the cryptid scene and so forth. And a lot of, and a lot of boots on the ground guys going into the Great Smoky National Park and so forth. There was Scott Carter, Carpenter, who was just an amazing investigator, and there are guys that are following in his footsteps, that are doing a lot of great stuff, and you're right about, like, I mean, I look at things like the whole experience with the Demon House and Gary and
yes,
and Zach bought that house, and then he did an investigation or two there and got creeped out and had it torn down. And he only owned it like a couple of years. Yep. I get it. You had a bad experience, you didn't know what to do with it, so you just got rid of the house. But in the process, what happened with the energy that was trapped in that house? What happened there? And then you've got the Conjuring house. I don't know if you follow any of that or not, but I mean, they have lost they lost their license.
Yep. Yeah, that was a whole thing. I heard Bobby Mackey's is torn down now.
Bobby Mackey's just got torn down. Honestly, with that building, it was kind of time. Fortunately, in some circumstances, like Elkmont and the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is going through. They're going through some changes and doing renovations in a lot of those buildings and so forth, and restoring that. But and then Cades Cove, which will always be a hot spot for paranormal activity. There's no getting around Cades Cove. I don't know if you've seen any of the investigations done there or not.
No.
That crap is crazy, dude. I'm telling, crazy there.
Have you been to what's the prison out there? Is it Brushy Mountain?
Brushy Mountain. Yeah. I have not been there. I have not been there.
I would love to go there. I when I watch these shows that cover this, I can feel the energy coming off of that. It's crazy energy out there, but
yeah. I interviewed the Paranormal Rejects, which is a fairly new group. And they had gone out there. They've done a lot of good investigation. I'm telling you, it's like a brother-sister team, and the sister's husband is part of the team too. And they're raw, they're very new, and they're very raw. Oh my goodness. Like when they first started up, like when I was getting ready to interview them, I told them, I said, guys, I know you like to drop the F-bomb. I know you don't have a lot of filter going on, but please, for the sake of my show, can you kind of tone the language down just a little bit? And it was honestly, they've done some crazy catches on their investigations. Again, like I live about it's 2 hours to Knoxville. Knoxville is part of the company I work with is part of their district. So I go to Knoxville sometimes for work and so forth. There's a lot of stuff in the Knoxville area. Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is crazy.
Yeah, Tennessee is one of the books that I'm actually working on for the future is going to be a Battlefield Ghosts book. So I'm going to try and hit. Yeah, so I was actually going to do part 1 because I just moved to Maryland a couple years ago, and I was in Virginia, and I actually started with Battlefields in Virginia because I knew a bunch of them, and I got some good stuff. I got some good stuff. And unfortunately, I did not follow the rules of the writer. You do not back up, and I lost everything. So I have to do. I lost. I had pictures, and when I got my new phone, and they didn't all come over on the new phone, and I didn't back up my copy, and I lost everything. And I was so mad because I actually went to 5 or 6 battle, and I had some really good stuff at the one battlefield. It was amazing. It was Antietam.
Wow, yeah.
And so, but that gives me something to look forward to because I still want to do that because I was going to do part 1, and then part 2 I was going to move farther south to like Chickamauga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Alabama. I was going to try and get Mississippi. Maybe go to Vicksburg, and just kind of hit some of the other battlefields farther south. So
Chickamauga is no joke. I'm going to tell you that. Like Chickamauga, downtown Chickamauga, they literally, when I was there, was one stop sign. It was like literally one intersection, and downtown, the library was in the old train depot, and there was a Masonic temple right there in the downtown area too. Large Masonic following in that area.
Wow.
And then, there's a story of Old Green Eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Yes, I am.
It was like Chickamauga.
Yes.
And they're in, was it Lafayette? They're in Dade County, I believe it is. They had this campus area almost of old Civil War era houses. They were all painted white.
Oh, wow.
And they had been converted into apartments. Creepy as crap.
Oh wow.
God. Oh my God. Just it's amazing. That area is really amazing, very interesting. And then when you get into like Shiloh, I've not been to Shiloh, but yeah, Chickamauga is definitely like the vibe of that area is insane, absolutely insane. So let's talk for a minute about where to find your book at, and I'm assuming that's where you can find future books as well.
Yes. You can find it at Ozark Mountain, OZARKMTN.com, ozarkmountain.com. That's my publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishers. You can find it on Amazon, obviously. You can find it on Barnes & Nobles. Basically any, I guess most platforms you can order books off of on the internet, but those are the top ones. And also, if you go to Ozark Mountain, you can see my mini bio and all the good stuff. And it's a really good company out there in Arkansas. So
good stuff. Yes. And so the second book will be there, and I'm assuming any future volumes
yes
will be there as well.
Yes.
Because I got to tell you, I'm going to go over and pick up a copy of your book, and so I can read that. It's highly unusual for me not to read a book before I do an interview most of the time.
Do me a favor, Daniel. Send me contact information. Will send you a copy.
Awesome. Yeah, I will. I'll do that. So is there any final thoughts that you have that you want to leave with us today?
Just basically that thank you for having me on. Um, I just love these shows because I get to talk about the paranormal, which is obviously, as you can see, is something that is really dear to my heart. And I just love because there's so many ways you can go to, and I love the fact that we don't have to have a format. We just jump right in and go in so many different directions because there's so much to cover. And again, it's just I just have a blast doing these shows, and I just appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you coming on. As a matter of fact, I want to put you on my list of repeat offenders and have
Absolutely,
you back because when that second book comes out, for sure, I'm have a feeling there's going to be some stuff that we're going to want to talk about. I may bring you on at some point to talk about some stuff with cases that I've covered on the Paranormal Files, which
absolutely,
is the show that I do. The show premieres at 7 o'clock every Thursday. There's a premiere of episode of the Paranormal Files where I go over different cases and so forth. Tonight's episode will be open cases that I still have in the works that I'm working on. I think I talk a little bit about the Amityville case
oh, okay,
on there. The well, I mean, come on. At the time that the Amityville case first became public, you and I were both kids.
absolutely, yeah.
And that was a big story, big
Oh
deal.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. What's your take on that? Because I've heard so many debates about whether it was real, whether it was made up, and I've read the book, and I've heard a lot of podcasts and shows discussing. And I actually talked with I saw a really good one with Ron DeFeo before he died,
Mhm.
and then one of the kids that actually one of the Amityville what were their names? The Lutzes. One of the Lutzes kids did a really good
Mhm.
podcast one time, and they swore everything happened. So I was just I don't know what's your take on it.
You know, I've done I've done research on it. I've read a lot about it. I've watched a lot of videos, a lot of documentaries. I've watched all of the movies related to the story, and uh, so here's the thing: the history of that area is set up for something. It's set up for something. I don't know what, but it's set up for something. Um, the spot where that house is at, the grounds that that house is on, there's feels to me like there is something there, and the source is a confusion to me though, because there was a spot in the house there in the basement
Right.
that they talked about a lot um, in a lot of the investigation and so forth. Um, the work that the Warrens did, I mean, Lorraine, was it Lorraine?
Yeah. Yeah, Lorraine.
She
Yep.
said she said that basically that the house was the personification of pure evil. And I had a lot of I know a lot of people thought the Warrens were batshit crazy. I had a lot of respect for the Warrens, um, especially Lorraine. I felt like she was very spot on with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, the photograph of the little boy that was caught during their investigation
Yep.
freaked me out for years.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
there, the fact that the current owners and previous owners have gone to so many lengths to transform the house. They've changed the windows,
Yep.
they've changed the address of the house, they've done a lot
Hmm.
of things to try to alter the house itself is very interesting to me.
Yep.
Now, with all that said, do I think that the Lutzes fabricated the story at all? No, I do not. I don't think it was fabrication. I think it's highly unusual that like every single manifestation known to man would happen in one spot. You know, including like the whole Phantom marching band thing and all of that. I
Yes.
mean, there was a lot of stuff that they listed that were manifestations that I kind of went, okay, is this just a little bit exaggerated?
No.
But do I think there's a legitimate thing going on there? Yeah, I do. Again, though, you know, talking about folks trying to decide who's the expert among us. I am by no means an expert. I've been doing research and work with the paranormal since I was 9 years old, which is a few days ago. But by no means am I an expert at this point. There's a lot of stones left unturned.
Right.
There, you know, there's a lot of questions I have about DeFeo himself. You know, he was heavily into taking some really bad substances. He was heavily addicted to alcohol. So there was some stuff going on with him personally.
Yep.
But and it's uncanny how much of a resemblance he bore to George Lutz. That was really uncanny to me.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, and I had watched a couple of interviews with George and Kathy. I felt like at times I kind of felt like it was the same kind of show as watching you know, anybody else that was ever on in the talk show circuits. You know, it was kind of like, okay, are they really able to keep a straight face while they're saying some of this or not? You know, but again, you know, I've not seen the interview with the Lutz kids. I would like to see some of those.
Yeah, those are really interesting. Like I said, it was the one boy, and he basically said everything that was in there happened, and he relayed what happened. It was a really interesting interview. It was like 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But yeah, it was really interesting. You know, and of course, you know, we all saw the movie with Margot Kidder. And then I read the book, I think when in 4th grade when it came out, I think, you know, so Jay Anson, the guy who wrote it, had like a heart attack and he died. I don't know. It's like the whole, you know, the Amityville curse and then the whole, you know, everybody's got curses, but yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I have to agree. You know, a lot of the thing that I run up against, and I'm sure you have as well in your investigations, is that 9 times out of 10, it's the land, not the homes or the people. Right. And I think that might be one of the cases because that's a very old area up there. And it may be a case of that's the land plus the awful murders that took place. And again, I don't know what happened from like the 70s back, you know, that nobody ever talks about if there was any tragedies beforehand.
Right. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about anything before the Defoe family, but yeah, that case is definitely one of the cases that really sparked my interest in paranormal research and later in paranormal investigation. You know, and just the immense amount of things that were reported that happened there. The Warrens doing their thing there really sparked my interest. So it is very interesting. The story, you know, is classic and timeless at this point. It is ingrained in our pop culture even now. So I definitely feel like that you would be it would be good to have you back on, to kind of talk about some of these things, some of the things dealing with the paranormal files and so forth. From time to time, it would be good to have some feedback from somebody else who has kind of been there and have, and so we will definitely have you back on at some point coming up, and I've got you in my contacts, so we will definitely be keeping in touch. And I got to get a copy of book 1 and book 2. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. All right. So, and if you will, shoot me an email with your links, and I'll put that in with the promo for this, and we will get this out. Like I said, I'll probably drop the show on this coming Tuesday.
Okay.
And I'll let you know as soon as it drops. Actually, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll know that it dropped.
I can do that.
Good deal. All right. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you. Thank you again for coming on. And I'm going to close this out if you'll hang on for just a moment afterwards. Sure. So we'll touch base and talk for just a moment. Okay. All right, guys, there you have it. Kevin Killen. I'm going to tell you, this has been a interview that for me has really sparked interest again in a lot of stuff, a lot of questions that I have. His sleep paralysis story I found extremely interesting. So you guys go over and check his book out. Watch out for the second book coming up. And also don't forget, tonight there will be a premiere of the Paranormal Files at 7:00 p.m. Central Time. Friday, I am interviewing Mark Elliott Foltz on the live show. Do not miss that. This guy is amazing. This is the one who channels the Bell Witch. So that's a episode that you got to be there to see. And then, of course, check out the website and the Facebook group for anything and everything related to Magical Journey. You guys have a good night, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. We must have been something in our past life.